Hello and welcome to the 6 Plus show, a podcast for your wargaming and 40k needs. Hobby talk, tactics, tournament reports, lore and much more. We have it all. Please welcome your host for the evening, Tom.
Welcome, ladies, gentlemen, and watch captains to that 6 Plus show. I am your host, Tom, and I'm very excited because I'm joined today by one Mike Costello. How are you doing, Mike?
Hello there. I'm good, thank you. Yes, excited to talk Deathwatch.
Yes.
They're my old love. It's been a while, but I'm using them again for a bit.
Yes.
And yeah, very exciting times for Deathwatch.
Yeah, this is it. This is why I was very keen to speak to you, because obviously you were the name, I think, as far as Deathwatch was concerned in sort of the middle of 9th edition. And obviously there's a lot of rumours and bubbling that they might be back again in force. And I'm very curious to find out exactly why that is. And I was delighted to hear that, yes, they're on your radar again at the moment. So we can talk about that as well and what's brought them back to your attention. So this is State of Play. This is where we talk about factions that are sort of snapshot in time. We find out from the very best players that I know and can bother to give me their time about how the faction is looking, what its general place in the game is, but also what its place in this particular moment in time is. And obviously we've got what I'm affectionately calling silly season ahead of us now, the sort of ARKS of Omen era going into the summer, where I think there's going to be a few months of really interesting and unusual builds coming through from all of the opportunities that have been unleashed by the points and the balanced data set and other things. So it's going to be really good to talk about Deathwatch. They're a faction I've only played a handful of times in my life, and so I'm excited to to learn more about them today and who else to get but Mike Costello. So I mean, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, Mike. Who are you? What's your sort of 40k story?
So I am, of course, Mike Costello, and so I work with Vanguard Tactics. Previous to Vanguard Tactics, I was using Deathwatch competitively, but now I'm full time at Vanguard Tactics. So I manage a lot of the customer-facing admin. I plan the content, and I do a lot of coaching as well as keeping the course up to date with all of the rapid changes going into effect. So only recently I changed our module on secondaries to reflect obviously ARKS of Omen. So heavily involved in how the game's changing and how it really affects our students. So competitively, I've been playing competitively for a while now. Deathwatch was really the army that I took to probably the highest levels that I could. And I'm very proud to have achieved obviously global best in faction for Deathwatch in the 2021/22 season, and make my mark as 4th overall in the UK for the ITC using just Deathwatch. Below very prominent names like Malik, etc. So very proud to do that with such a esoteric army.
Yes, no, fantastic. I was going to say, so Vanguard obviously. Times like this, I guess, highlight how much work that must be, right? Because the entire game, the face of it changes, all the information, it's like same but different, that kind of uncanny valley. So you guys must constantly be iterating to adapt and change things to make sure your students get the absolute most from it. So that's quite interesting, thinking about all the behind the scenes work that must go into that. And you're obviously a player who, I think the reputation amongst certainly my friends and other players I know is that it was someone said something along the lines of, Mike Costello could basically turn up with a packet of biscuits in a Tesco bag and beat you with it. It was sort of like it's this sense that what I like. You always take stuff that you want to try. It's unusual concepts a lot of the time. It's armies that aren't the obvious thing, and you always take a bunch of names and put in a really good showing with it. I mean, I was obviously keeping an eye on your Night Lords progress. I'm a Night Lords fan, and there was a Land Raider doing the rounds for a while, and a sort of very interesting Night Lords list. So you sort of it's very much sort of embodying that ethos of playing what you like and what you're interested in, and doing well with it as well, which is the dream, right?
yeah, exactly. And that's all I really want to do with 40k. In the end, it is a bit of fun. It's a way to escape and engaging with people. For me, Warhammer is the people, and I'm sure that's the same for most players in the game, right? So I love just taking an army that's fun for me, usually fun for my opponent, I hope. And we always have a good game.
Yeah, I think that's one of the less appreciated aspects of it, right? Is that it's nice when two armies turn up and both players are really enjoying the interaction and the way that the battle plays out, and people I think always respond well to something they haven't seen much of or aren't as used to and it doesn't feel like it's quite as copy and paste. So yeah, I think that's a really important thing, and that's something that we as players can bring to tournaments, right? By making those choices, by choosing to bring interesting things.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay. Well, let's talk about your history with the Deathwatch. Then, obviously, you've mentioned you've placed really high with them. How far back does your interest in Deathwatch go? How did you sort of get into them in the first place?
So quite some time back, I found the Metal Deathwatch upgrade sprue. I don't know if you're aware of
I am not.
is.
No, I am not.
But essentially, I ran a sort of Imperial Guard force. I don't own them anymore, and I wanted to have some Deathwatch in there because I read the lore about them and they're really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided that was back in maybe 6th. You could have allies in an allied detachment. Well, the full circle now. But I took some Stern Guard veterans and I painted them up as Deathwatch, and I took them on my list and pretended they were Deathwatch because Deathwatch didn't exist. And then the box came out. I can't remember what it was called. With the Gene Sealer cult in it.
Oh, it was the Deathwatch Gene Sealer cults box, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
I can't remember what it's called either.
No, but that dropped, and I was like, "That's sick. Now I can do an actual army of these guys." And proud to say, probably the first person to ever win an event with Deathwatch because I played one 2 weeks after the book dropped.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, before an FAQ came and sort of ruined it.
That can help. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I've been playing them ever since. They're just such a dynamic army, and if you can't collect every Space Marine chapter, you may as well play one that can be a bit of everything as well.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think that's the cool thing about them, right? Because obviously they've got this lore where they're drawn from all the different chapters, and they've got a rule set that kind of reflects that with a little bit of teching in different directions and putting on different hats for different turns, and I think that really rewards clever play. And the couple of times I've played Deathwatch players who really knew how to squeeze the juice out of being a White Scar for a turn or whatever it was you needed to be, I think they're a techie faction, techie army, and that really appeals. What do you feel, if you were going to describe their sort of the place of Deathwatch in the competitive game in a general sense over time, what's their role? What kind of an army are we dealing with in Deathwatch? What's their sort of place and function?
This is a difficult one. I think depending on the build, I like to think of them as a sort of maybe a dark horse, but kind of counter that people don't see as part of the meta, because you don't really see Deathwatch, right? But when it came to some of these powerful armies like Drukhari in recent times, etc., you had this army that was very good at killing something like aliens, and then suddenly this army was actually one that could beat what was currently the meta, whereas other armies really struggled. So I think it was kind of like a one to watch out for, but so rare that you didn't really see it. But it could sort of upset. Basically, it was one of those armies that could come in and upset a game by taking out someone who's got a meta army, that kind of thing. Yeah,
no, I like that, and I think Dark Horse is right, because obviously, that's right. I think they're really well placed to take advantage of a Xenos heavy meta, aren't they? When that's the case, and this was very much the case during what I think was called the Drukhari summer. I was obviously a Drukhari player, so I was on the other end of that a few times, where it's like, oh, damn, they're really well tooled up to just blow all of this straight out the sky, and rightly so, because that's their place in the meta and that's their role. So yeah, they definitely thrive when there's a substrand of Xenos doing well, something out there for them to use all their tricks and tools against. And I remember looking at the book and thinking, they've just got these nice little edge tools for each one of the different Xenos sort of factions and species they might encounter. And they're obviously they're quite an elite army on the table as well, right? It feels like, oh, hello, Cat. The Cat's getting involved. It feels like they're an army that doesn't pack a ton of bodies, although maybe that's changing now. But you also had this contrast between the sort of the Army of Renown builds that came a bit later, that I think you were a fan of, and the earlier builds. Do you want to sort of elaborate a little bit about those two different kind of pathways for Deathwatch?
So I think the primary build, before I sort of delved into and sort of shaped some of the meta Deathwatch builds, was sort of with the 3 Redemptors, There's a relic for a 5+ invulnerable save in an aura. I expect
Mhm.
we'll see that again soon.
Yeah.
But with 3 redemptors and then this character with that aura, and then some of the usual tools that you'll see with Space Marines, and people like to take combat squadding bike units, so that there were OBSEC bike units, and play using OBSEC a lot. And then there was sort of my version of it. So I kind of saw Deathwatch as potentially an incredibly threatening melee army,
Mhm.
which was quite different to the traditional build, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, we've got all of these guns, we've got special issue ammunition, etc., etc. And then when I realised how much, well, basically Thunderhammers, I could pack into a Proteus kill team, the Firstborn kill team, um,
Yes.
it was like, well, this is insane. These guys can take pretty much anything on, and yeah, smack it off the face of the earth. And then, of course, you can pack in storm shields as well. So
Yes.
the ability to have these really tough bricks that are OBSEC, so they play the mission excellently.
Mm,
Even if you don't kill your target, you're definitely taking objectives, and then they're tough to kill back. And yeah, so built into them, I remember I used to run a whirlwind for the fight last
yeah.
stratagem. I used to run plasma inceptors. I'm sure I'd probably put them back in now if I fancied playing Deathwatch.
Yeah, I reckon so.
And I used to love Hellblasters as well, and likewise, I think they've got a great place now as well.
Yeah.
So that sort of field was sort of some dreadnoughts and stuff doing okay, and then obviously I was fortunate to do quite well with my melee build, and then sort of I think that was during the Drakari sort of days.
Yeah.
So that was Drakari and then Admech.
Yeah.
And on the Drakari note, I'm sure other Space Marine players will squeal in delight when they hear that I have killed, I think 17 or 18 Drazars in games with the Deathwatch during that time.
Very good. Very good.
But yeah, then the Army of Renown rocked up, and initially I wasn't convinced, because I was like, well, it's just the restrictions are so heavy. You have to take characters or kill teams, or transports, and I was like, well, I really like the fight last from my whirlwind.
Yes.
Massive for a combat army. How can I possibly survive without it? But I was sort of coaxed and convinced into taking it. A few the Goonhammer guys do the articles. I was saying, like, this is literally an Army Renown built for you. Like,
Yeah.
you need to do this. And
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, I'll do it for you, and I'll win an event for you. And I did. Fortunately, I won a GT with them. And,
Amazing.
And I was like, oh my god, these are nuts. This Army of Renown is absolutely nuts. Yeah, and being able to switch into a chapter tactic every battle round, a different one.
Yeah.
And then just really going into depth with I think there's 38 overall chapter tactics, because there's the successors you can do as well.
Yeah.
So sort of went through and just like, I might need this in this particular situation, and I probably keep track of about 15 in my head, or maybe different
amazing
matchups, right? It's a lot of admin.
Yeah,
but,
it is admin.
Yeah, and there's a successor where you can take a first founding chapter again, which is something people don't really know about. But you could go White Scars, and then later in the game go White Scars again.
Oh, that's clever. Yeah, so you go White Scars successor. Nice. Get that double advance and charge going. That's cool.
Yeah.
And what was, in terms of the Army of Renown, obviously I've seen those lists, and you've got these kind of brick kill teams, and there's not many of them in a list.
No.
So the thing I'm always curious about, what's the output? Because people talk about the output of it. What was the source in that was driving the sort of output of those like 4 kill teams that made them so powerful?
So it's 5 total kill teams.
Yeah.
It's 50 Marines and usually 3 characters, because that's basically all you can fit in there. There's not much.
Yeah, it's really not much.
So the main kill team, the classic one, is this Proteus Firstborn kill team, and what you got in there, you've got a sergeant with a heavy hammer, so that's a damage 4 hammer.
Yeah.
And then you've got a black shield with a hammer and a chainsaw, because he gets an extra attack if he's got 2 melee weapons. Then I used to run 2 Terminators with Thunderhammers and shields. I think 4 normal guys with shields and bolters, a biker, and a Vanguard veteran.
Wow.
So this was 15 Thunderhammer attacks in total. 4 of them at damage 4.
Yeah. Very nice.
It's brutal when you put the army into Space Wolves for +1
Oh,
to
yeah.
hit when you go in. There's a psychic power from the Libby, who is he makes the list work, which can give you another +1 to hit. So suddenly you're going in with Thunderhammers hitting on 2s.
Yeah, and that's not getting slowed down. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, so it's pretty brutal. So that's those three units. And then you've got this Indomitor kill team. I was like, so with the Army of Renown, there's a stratagem where you can make your hits wounds.
Ah, yes. Yeah.
Right. So I was like, what's the most hits I could get here? And it turns out, because I assumed it wouldn't work with Flamers because that didn't feel right.
Yeah.
And also because it's a random number of shots, and like with all the things we teach at VT, we want to know the numbers. We want to know what we can kill. So went with 4 Boltstorm aggressors with the top hatches, 5 3-shot sort of assault bolters with the heavy intercessors, and an interceptor, both for fallback and charge and for extra movement. And it pumps out 59 shots. So
wow,
with tactical doctrine in play, that's and then if you've got the chaplain for +1 to hit with shooting, and then re-rolls from either a captain or a watchmaster, that's pretty much 59 wounds at least AP1.
Yeah.
Which takes most things out of the game.
it really does, yeah.
Yeah, depending what they shoot, right? I remember one event I killed 2 Custodes Dreadnoughts in one go. I was like, okay, well, that was pretty good. I think I killed 6 Deathcopters in one go as well, one time. So it's really brutal. But the aggressors also add some combat punch as well. And the brick being T5 and 3 wounds apiece is tough not to crack.
Yes, no, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it's good to have it explained, because that was one where I saw the list. I never actually got to play against it, so I never really found out what it does.
Yeah.
And is the Army of Renown, is that gone now, or has that made it into the later stages of the edition?
Sadly is gone. It's
passed
in the
away.
past.
Passed away.
It's passed. So we've lost the goodness of being in a different chapter every battle round.
Yeah, sad times.
We've lost the auto wound strat, which fine, it was probably would be OP in a world without Armor of Contempt. It'd be very strong.
But a remarkable tool, and it's so that takes us to looking forwards then, and looking to the future, because obviously I think if we talk about you in the immediate future first, then we can think about ARKS more broadly. But so Deathwatch are back on your radar. Do you want to explain what's happened to bring that about?
So I'm attending the Las Vegas Open.
Amazing,
which is awesome,
absolutely amazing.
Yes, they've rolled back and said that nothing that's come out from January 2023 onwards is legal, but everything that was legal as of the 31st of December 22 is legal for LVO, which means that the Army of Renown is legal for LVO.
Getting its last hurrah.
It wasn't on my radar because I assumed they'd use any new stuff and it'd be out of date. But going to the biggest event in the world with the Army that I basically came onto the meta with is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes a lot of sense. And where do you think that will sit in a sort of pre-ARKS of Omen meta? Do you feel good about it into different situations there, or is it a case of leaning on something that you just know inside out?
A bit of both.
Bit of both.
I've played a few games and realised that yes, I can remember most of the stuff, provided I manage the admin well. Place the models in exactly the right place, coherency and movement shenanigans. It's all okay. But meta-wise, it's in a good place. You can get multiple 5-ups against mortal wounds if you're facing the Tzeentch. Thousand Suns sort of thing, and then you got Flamers that are AP2, but of course with Armor of Contempt and cover, you kind of got a 2-up save against them, and then you've got this Gravis squad, the Indomitors, where I've upgraded the Sergeant with an extra wound and a 2-up armor save for Artificer armor. And then there's a stratagem for +1 save against damage 1. So
very nice.
If the Flamers shoot that unit or the Bolters shoot that unit with Thousand Suns, you've got a 2-up save.
So you can tank a lot of volume in much the same way they'll be trying to do back, I guess. Soaking up that damage.
And then you've got choosing the chapter tactics. You can go Black Templars. There's a successor for warded for a 5-up against
very
Mortals.
Smart.
So you've got play into like the top stuff. I wouldn't say I'm confident about.
No. But there's stuff you can do. Yeah.
But I've got an inside chance, right? So
Yeah.
Nids has always been an interesting one. They don't have a huge amount of AP. The greatest thing I have against Nids is the fact that the Reaper can't kill a unit on his own.
Yes.
Which means I can then kill it and get it out of the game if it charges.
Yeah.
There's no overrun.
No, exactly. Yeah. So the nature of the lists are such that he can't really get stuck in because he's not getting out again.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then other armies, I guess Tau's always been an issue. I'm not sure how I'll face Tau. I've been okay in the past, but they can be an issue. Trying to think what are the other armies. Demons should be okay because we've got loads of shots. And Bellicor, we can probably drop Bellicor.
Yeah, I reckon so. I think so.
Wounds,
I think that'll do it. Yeah, his minus one wound isn't going to help him much there.
Yeah, and then, God, well, I'm being stupid and missing something. Quins is okay. Quins, they tend to struggle to cut through the Deathwatch, and it takes a few bolt shots to take them out.
Yeah.
But off the top of my head, I'm sure I'm missing some obvious ones.
No, that sounds like a good spread. That's a lot of the stuff I'd certainly that I would expect to see in the mix.
Yeah, Votan.
Votan, yeah.
But Votan's probably okay because I've got so much obsec and I'm probably quite hard for them to kill anyway.
Here's a fun bit of needless speculation. What bit of anti-Votan tech would you write into the next Deathwatch book? What little strat or something would you give them? To screw? Because obviously Votan are classed as Xenos, right? So what would the trick be there? Do you think?
I think a stratagem that prevents their auto rune thing.
Yeah, something that stripped the judgment. Tokens. Yeah, something that stripped the judgment tokens off would be amazing, right? Yeah,
like just a CP till the end of the phase, your unit counts as having 0 judgment tokens.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Makes the most sense, I think.
Yeah,
or ignoring void armor or being able to reroll wounds or something.
You could go either way with it, right? But that's something that would be very interesting to think about. Yeah, what the anti-Votan twist ends up being in the next iteration. Okay, no, that's very exciting. I mean, I had a couple of questions as well relating to LVO. The first one was, how do you feel about the cutoff and leaning back on the older rules? Do you think that's the right way to go with it?
I mean, it was always a difficult decision for them.
Yeah,
I would have preferred to play new rules. It's always nice to play the latest version of the game, especially at a tournament that big. But it was quite close, and I do understand the feeling that ARKS of Omen, the mission book with the new detachment, etc., should be paired with the points changes and the balance data slate. It kind of all is one package. So not being able to adapt to that's fine. Obviously, there was a lot of controversy over there. I don't want to name any names, but people did spark fires, and that's probably led to the decision in part.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm fine. I back it. We all know exactly how the meta is. It just means we have to be careful with confusing ourselves with ARKS of Omen.
I guess that's always the risk. I think, as you say, there's not a right way to slice that. There isn't a sort of an outcome that keeps everyone happy there. But I guess at least with this,
I feel for the guard players.
Most. Completely. I mean, I was feeling for guard players even this month. The last couple of events where it's sort of like I've got guard players who have been really left out in the cold because they can't even use the stuff from late 8th and stuff. Some of the other bits that have gone out of print and everything else. So it's been a tricky time for them. I think they'll be making up for it over the next few months.
Will.
You're a guard player as well, right? I think you did the Vanguard. I heard you doing the Vanguard guard review.
Yeah, guard another old love of mine. Got a big army, and I just love the Rough Riders, and they're back.
Yes,
couldn't be happy with that. Excited to see. I'm not going to use them until I've rebased my horses.
Nice.
So we've got to wait for those models to come out.
Yes,
before I'll take them to the field an event.
Yeah, Rough Riders looked exciting to me. The melee punch on those is just glorious, absolutely glorious. Okay, well let's look ahead then to ARKS of Omen and think about Deathwatch going forwards, because there were a few. I was sort of you've got your ear to ground listening to the sort of rumblings of who's coming out well and what sorts of things people think is going to work well in this last sort of run up into the summer, and Deathwatch were one of the names that kept popping up, and this again is above my head. I'm not clued in enough on Deathwatch to know why this is. So I thought, let's pick your brains. Let's find out, why should people be excited about Deathwatch going into ARKS of Omen?
It's interesting because I have a very slightly different take on it. But the biggest changes for Deathwatch is that we can take most of our weapon combinations and it's cheaper.
Yep.
So, you can take your Infernus heavy bolters and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. You can take your frag cannons and it doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. So all of these special weapons, you can now take a lot more of them. They're a lot more valid as well with Armour of Contempt going. I actually always thought Armour of Contempt was a bad thing for Marines because it invalidated a lot of their shooting and their doctrines.
Yeah, a lot of the bolters and stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's nice to have. Obviously, everything being a lot cheaper from the main codex kind of makes up for losing the Armour of Renown. Yeah, so Terminators are good. I think Storm Shield Terminators are basically untouched by any of the changes.
Yes.
Because they never had Armour of Contempt.
Yeah.
And now they'll be better because people bring more AP1. So Terminators with Storm Shields is big. And obviously, as the main purveyors of Storm Shields, the Deathwatch, we don't suffer too much losing Armour of Contempt. So we're in a good place. However, there are some minor issues with some of the changes. So the main one is, and we know there's lots of hype about Iron Hands, and it ties in a little bit with that. So the doctrines, you can now stay in the Dev doctrine, but unfortunately, the Deathwatch Codex hasn't been FAQ'd. So we only get Dev doctrine once per game,
right?
But we choose the turn. Which means we can't access really the Codex Warfare secondary.
Yes, that's going to restrict your ability to exploit that. Yeah,
exactly. And losing our other secondaries was reasonably significant because we had a few options in there, especially against aliens. There was a secondary for a point for every alien unit you kill.
Yep.
Losing that sort of cuts out, I think, a little bit of our flavour. And that one hurt me because I really enjoyed going into an alien game and knowing if all else fails, I'll just pick this.
Yeah.
And kill some stuff.
Yeah, you got your 22 Drakari units on the board, and you're like, I'll get some points, I reckon. I'll be all right.
Exactly. On the other side of things, excellent change is the sticky objectives for troops.
Yes.
We have the best troops available to Space Marines in the game.
Yes.
So, that's nuts. And what I will say, so speaking from experience here, because I took my LVO list to an RTT that ran the balance data slate and the new points this past weekend, so on Sunday, yesterday. And that was very interesting. I played 80 points down because I wanted to just play my LVO list.
Yep.
It was very interesting. Losing the Army Renown really hurt, but sticky objectives was one of the biggest highlights because it meant I could just move off and do other stuff and still maintain a hold on objectives. So there's a lot to be excited for. I think we can look forward to varied lists with the Deathwatch because I don't think they really all build into, the gladiators we keep hearing about. I'm sure, and I know I've looked at it, a couple of Gladiator Reapers is quite nice, but without the ability to stay in Dev Doctrine, it won't quite be the nastiness that people are expecting. So in terms of my actual list, it only went down 80 points. Oh, hello.
Hello, Mike. I've lost internet there. I'm now back and around.
Okay.
I'm very, very sorry about that. We've
That's
had crazy weather here, and the internet has been on and off all day. It's been horrific.
That's right.
Where were we? So we were just talking about your experience at the event with trying the list out.
Yes, yeah. So went to the event. The biggest win was the sticky objectives for the troops choices because I could move off and do things. I felt the hurt of Armour of Contempt, especially on my Indomitor kill team, the Gravis squad. And then not being able to do the auto wound stratagem really, really hurt me as well. I pack a lot of Thunderhammers, so not being able to be space walls across the army suffered as well there. So we're going to see diverse builds, but the limit to Dev Doctrine once per game, I think, doesn't take us the same direction with all the gladiators and everything that other Marine armies can go. But I do still think there's space for maybe one or two if you want to go that route.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting. Yes, because I was going to ask you what you think, what sorts of units. Obviously, you're now freed up a bit, right? Because you don't need to build into the Army of Renown's sort of specifications. So what kinds of units do you think look good for Deathwatch going forwards into this new world of ARKS of Omen?
Well, I think the Hammer Protist team still has a place.
Yeah.
So I'd probably still run a couple of those, if just for old time's sake. I think aggressors are fantastically cheap now.
Yeah, 90 points for 3 is horrifying.
And I don't think I'd bother taking the heavy intercessors in the big squad anymore. I may as well just pack on aggressors and more aggressors.
Yes.
So aggressors are in a good place now. Obviously, Plasma Inceptors, though, I wouldn't be surprised if there was an emergency points update, because they do seem very, very cheap, don't they?
Plasma Inceptors. So that's what, they're 40 points each now, right?
40 points each.
How do they work in Deathwatch? Can you mix them into other squads, or would you just run them as they were? Would you just run them in sort of bricks on their own?
So you'd probably run them on their own. The issue with running them in a kill team is that you'd have to take 5 heavy intercessors.
Right.
Even though they're cheap now, I mean, to be honest, they're not bad. 115 points for T5, 3 wounds.
They too do look cheap for their sort of durability, right?
Yeah. But Plasma Inceptors do look good. Very good. I like Hellblasters.
Yes.
I've liked them for a very long time, and I've been surprised people haven't been taking more.
Yes.
But with the opportunity to strategic reserve for free,
that was going to be my next question. Yeah.
I think things like Hellblasters have a leg in, because 15 shots. So I shredded stuff at the weekend with Hellblasters. Until they died, of course.
Yeah.
Quite easy to kill.
Yeah, because this is a big change. I think this is one of the underappreciated changes, and it's definitely for me. It's one of the things that's got me scared about Marines is the free strategic reserves. Right, I've obviously been playing GSC for a while, and so I've got quite a lot of appreciation for what the ability to dunk someone before they hit you does for a game. And I was been sort of talking to friends of mine who play Marines, and this is huge for Marines because one of the issues they have is, as you say, if you take Armour of Contempt off, they are going to die. But now you've got these wonderfully efficient shooting units that are basically going to get to pick their moment to have their say in the game, right? Something like a Hellblast or an Eradicator is going to walk on and get it shot before it dies, and it's not costing you anything to do it. It's an amazingly powerful change.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. And, I think Hellblasters are probably my top unit for it. But the thing is, it also lets you play defensively in a game where you know that your opponent's alpha is really strong and you can't hide. So you could even put some of your kill teams in strategic reserve. And then, if you have the chaplain in there for +2 charge litany, you can get them in combat turn 2 when they arrive and stuff. So
so you can, as a charge delivery, the chaplain runs the edge, tees up the litany, reserves come in, 7 charge straight into the enemy lines.
Yeah.
Quite terrifying.
The next unit I think that I would look at, and this is something I would probably look at running, is drop pods with veterans in, loaded up with heavy weapons. It's 27 points for a veteran with any weapons it likes. Previously, you'd be looking at 35 for a veteran with a frag cannon or something. So suddenly you can take little squads of 5, and with 9 to 12 troop choices in an ARKS of Omen detachment, you can pack drop pods with Marines in that do real damage. Drop them down. So, you could take 3 drop pods, a bunch of vets in them, then take your chaplain and a big brick to teleport up with him with the Beacon Angelis.
Of course, yes.
Give everything +2 charge as well when you get up there. And suddenly you've got an alpha that is both very intimidating and makes it difficult for you to get into the rest of the board.
Yes.
So if you're not, well, even if you are a Marine player, I think this is an era of having screening units, however you can get them.
Yes.
Because I think every Marine list is probably packing at least a drop pod with devs in. Sadly, Deathwatch can't take Devastators, but trust me, I would. If they were an option, they'd be straight in there.
What do you think the loadout would be on veterans in a pod for Deathwatch?
I think you could look at it a couple of ways. Frag cannons now are fantastic with armor contempt out of the picture.
Right. Okay.
So you've got the 2d3 AP1 variant, and you've got the AP2 flat 2 damage, kind of like a mini plasma gun.
Yeah. Scary.
So that's quite good. But then obviously when the blast kicks in against hordes, you've got an amazing tool there. The Infernus heavy bolter, because you have a heavy bolter and a heavy flamer all in one weapon.
Oh wow!
So you just drop that in, burn the hell out of something, and then shoot the heavy bolters at something else.
Yeah,
and that's a steal for the points that it would cost. I think also Terminators, now that the weapon upgrades are free, so Deathwatch ones cost a little bit more at 35 points each. And the Cyclone is +10 for us because we can take 3 of them in a squad. However, things like a plasma cannon, or any of the other heavy weapons, 3 assault cannons in the right doctrine will still do work.
Oh, absolutely.
So I reckon you could definitely see some of those too. And then another unit, Outriders.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Massive points drop for Outriders.
Yes.
I think they're 35 each, which is incredibly cheap. But when you look at the secondaries and everything with the game, if you do take Intercessors, which are only 90 points, they don't do much, but they can sticky an objective for you. They can come on from Strat Reserve and do an action. But if you do that and you take 5 Outriders, then you suddenly got this unit that can for 2 CP advance and charge. You can get shock tactics with it. You can get behind enemy lines, and they're a troops choice, so you'd get the CP. So I think there's a good use for Outriders now with the Deathwatch, because they're quite tough with transhuman and
it's a lot of
wounds
wounds
each.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of attacks at AP2, which again, of course, much better now that Armor of Contempt is gone.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think people will be excited to get Outriders out because I think everybody loved them when that box came. Everyone wanted Outriders to be great, and they all. I remember everyone was chucking on the board as soon as they had them. They were like the first unit everyone painted up, but they have struggled to find a place in 9th edition. So that's intriguing and exciting to hear. I've seen lists with Chaos Bikers where that it's just the sheer stodginess of it, right? If you get that in your lines, it's a lot to clear out, and you've got other problems at the same time. So that's a really interesting tip, and that's very exciting to hear. Are there any other standouts for you, or are those the main ones, would you say?
They're the main ones. I mean, the usual culprits are probably still good. I think your Redemptor build with the 5-up Invuln now may as well come back in, because you do need the 5-up Invuln, as I've found. So that's definitely back in with your Redemptors. Whirlwind, I think goes straight back in the list for
fight last in.
If you go for a melee build, you can of course go for a shooting build, because being able to pick tactical for the turn you need it, or pick dev for the one turn you need it, is pretty devastating.
Literally devastating. That's great. So this is a point of curiosity. Obviously, it sounds like the secondary game is a little bit less obvious in some ways, right? Because of the restrictions that you've mentioned. I think a lot of the chatter is that Codex Warfare, Dev Doctrine, and just make that 5 turns of heavy guns makes sense. And we're going to see some fairly terrifying builds that do that. What do you think the way forward secondary wise is, or what do you see the way forward as secondary wise for Deathwatch?
Frankly, for Deathwatch, I don't think we can rely on Codex Warfare like the other Space Marine factions, because we'd have to time that one turn
very, have to go really big,
to make the points. You could probably build into it and then have that one turn, and maybe get 10 points off it total or something. Difficult to do. I think shock tactics has always been a good one for Deathwatch, because the army can be so massively obsec, but with the buff to behind enemy lines, I find it difficult not to try and build for that with basically any army. Especially for the free CP.
That's huge, isn't it? Absolutely huge.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think Oath, we're probably forced into trying to do Oath on certain missions, and we still have the resilience to do it. So, for example, if you pack 6 Storm Shields in a Proteus kill team, they're pretty much just as durable as they were with Armor Contempt, if not more. And those will survive on a middle objective with the 5-up Feel No Pain from the Psychic Power as well.
Mhm.
So Oath of Moment's not bad. And then, well, you got what, Shock Tactics, all behind enemy lines, and then you got Oath of Moment, or no prisoners probably, because I think a lot of the meta's
Yes.
going to give you no prisoners.
There's going to be wounds out there. Yeah.
And then, I mean, it's a tough one. You just have to do an action. Banners is probably your go-to.
Yeah.
If you're running big kill teams.
Mhm.
But then, R&D is an easy option as well for Space Marines now because they're so cheap.
Yes.
So you can quite easily get units around the table
Mhm.
very, very quickly to do it. Especially things like, as I mentioned before, the Outriders being troops. You can zoom across the table 14 inches, do an R&D, and it goes off basically automatically.
Of course, yeah.
So plenty of tools to get R&D with Deathwatch, and of course defend banners.
Yes.
So they're probably our go-tos, and then obviously if you can bring it down against the knights that inevitably will be about, then that's fine. Yeah.
Does the Arks of Omen detachment massively change things for Deathwatch, or was it already the case that you could pretty much get what you needed in anyway?
I think it's nice to have the option for 12 troop choices. I think that's probably the best thing that's come out of it.
Yeah.
Because
Nuts,
like 12, that's great because of how cheap the heavy weapons are. Elite characters not taking up slots is nice. Not huge. Taking 6 heavy supports is quite nice. 4 HQs is a good thing to access as well. But it doesn't massively benefit, I wouldn't say. I don't think it changes it too much. But it's a nice to have, and obviously every command point is very valuable for Deathwatch.
Are they an army you think that you'll be looking to focus on in the Arks of Omen Zero, or is there other stuff that's got your attention?
So I think I'll probably play something else. The main thing is for me that my army that I took this weekend was 1,917 points.
Yeah.
Which is only 80 points freed up.
Yeah.
Which with all of the changes doesn't look like a lot actually.
No, because certainly compared to some of the other stuff I'm seeing, no.
Exactly. And that's because I would run the veterans in my Protest kill teams with either just a shield or just a sword and a bolt gun at 20 points. But they're now 27 points each base.
Right.
And something like the Black Shield used to be 22 plus 12 for a Heavy Thunderhammer or a Thunderhammer. Now it's base 27 plus 10 for a Thunderhammer. So actually my squads haven't really saved many points at all.
No.
And the only way to really get around it would be to slap combi weapons on every single dude with a shield. I'm not really about that life because the amount of times you have to change your weapons over the course of Warhammer 40k's history and all of its editions drives me mad. And we've got so many different options, and I refuse to magnetize every single arm. But kudos to anyone that did. So I don't know whether the new Deathwatch will play the way I want it to. I will probably give it a go with this crazy 3-drop pods, beacon list, and strat reserve Hellblasters. And we'll see how that goes. And if I enjoy it, maybe I'll keep playing it. But it's always nice to play new things.
Absolutely.
And, so I'm actually looking at a bit of Custodes, maybe.
Exciting. Okay.
With a few Sisters of Silence.
Yeah.
Because they went down in points.
They did. Yes, they did.
So,
they did.
I'm looking forward to a different build and a different way of playing the game. I say that. I guess they're actually quite similar. But maybe that's a good thing.
It's
I don't know.
Big blocks of heroic guys holding the ground, doing their thing.
That's it.
No, it's an interesting time, isn't it? And I think the creative juices flowing is what we all want from this stage of an edition. And that is the one thing I'd say definitely for ARKS is no one can say it hasn't got people chatting and excited and trying different things. And I think it, when you're looking for that sort of big shake up through to the end of the release cycle, that's good to see. Where do you reckon? And I appreciate this is a really hard thing to speculate on. Where do you reckon Deathwatch fall in terms of power right now? How powerful does that feel? I mean, the drop pod thing sounds terrifying to me, but if you were going to wildly speculate, and it's so hard with so many moving parts, where do you think they're going to land? Other than right in front of the enemy with a bunch of shots, obviously.
So my honest opinion is they're not as good as people think they're going to be.
Okay.
Just because obviously they've lost a lot of survivability, and as I've mentioned before, all the issues with the doctrines, etc., don't
Yeah.
quite buff them.
Mhm.
So I think if we're using a sort of tier system, maybe higher B tier,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
maybe A, just because they're Marines
Yeah.
and they can get a lot of stuff for their points.
Yeah.
But I think on a very competitive level, maybe upper B.
Mm.
But I'm very much looking forward to someone proving me wrong and absolutely
Yeah.
absolutely smashing it with Deathwatch, because I love to see
Yes.
people innovating with these armies. But
Yeah.
for
Absolutely.
me, yeah,
It's always the hard thing, isn't it? It's much easier to speculate on how much things are going to change than it is to speculate on actually there's going to be some continuity here. I think we're seeing
yeah,
that with a whole bunch of armies. Although it feels dramatic, a lot of the fundamentals stay the same, and in general the changes seem to have taken away as well as given to
yeah.
most armies, and it's easier to see what's been given than what's been taken away sometimes.
Now there is one thing that does worry me,
Oh, here we go.
especially with the Plasma Inceptors being cheap,
Yeah.
is that Deathwatch can spam them to no end. Can take 5 in a Indomitor kill team,
Right.
which is a Duke's choice and
Yeah.
therefore not
Oh no.
limited. So, I mean, if you really want to go and do that,
I don't.
expect Plasma Inceptors to go get nerfed straight away.
Yeah.
But if you want to run, I don't even know how many you could fit in a list. I expect it to be a lot. And I expect that becomes the point of, like, some of these top players where they like to take these absolutely ridiculous lists.
Yeah. Oh man.
But yeah, I'll write it up just to see how ridiculous it is. I
Yeah.
think
Do
because that
let's
sounds
find out. That sounds funny.
ludicrous.
Yes.
But yeah,
Yeah, Plasma Incept is an interesting one. The volume and the output is terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And as you say, they might be one that needs a bit of a rollback again of the
yeah,
change.
yeah,
I
yeah.
guess we'll see. I guess so you're someone who understands the faction well. Looking into the more distant future,
hmm
thinking about where Deathwatch go in maybe future editions or future releases, is there anything you feel like Deathwatch could really use? Is there any changes you'd like to see to what the army can draw on or the way the army functions?
Yeah. I think it'd be nice to see a bit more of the different chapters coming
Yes.
together.
Yes.
It'd be nice, even if for some chapters there's a points cost for
Mm.
taking one of that chapter in your unit. Maybe
Yes.
that makes the hobby side of things a bit more difficult.
Mm.
But it'd be cool to see something like that in there. I'd like to see a bit more anti-alien stuff from them,
Yes.
especially since they literally have nothing against Gene Stealer Cult.
Well, yeah, exactly. That's another one. Yeah.
People are currently complaining about them having nothing against Votan. Well, one of those two is quite clearly more alien and came out in the box originally.
Yeah,
So,
that's funny if they're releasing the same one and they're like, nah, they're
no, they're not
not bothered
aliens.
about that. Doesn't count. No.
That's fine. That's not our main job. So yeah, I'd love to see more anti-alien stuff from them, and I would love to see them get access to more of the normal Space Marine stuff.
Yes.
But yeah. Other
What
than
would it
that,
take to get the plane on the table? I mean,
well,
ignoring the fact they've just been nerfed.
rightly so. They were
Yeah.
abusive.
Yeah, we're not going to
Um,
miss. We're not going to miss flyers, are we? At the end of the day,
I think. Yeah, I think the Valkyrie style deployment.
Oh yeah, so dropping as you come.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe bring them back for me.
Mm.
Ideally not if they die on a 1 and get out. Preferably without that bit.
Yeah.
But I think that all transport planes should be able to drop their units during their move.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think that'd be
it feels
pretty
like
cool.
something. I think that they'll have to work this out, but I think not having planes come in straight away, great. I think alpha strikes in general are something you have to manage very carefully.
Yeah.
I wonder long term whether planes coming in turn 2 should be able to have the move and do the thing. The kind of the strafing run or the dropping the guys off, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I feel like that would probably adequately compensate for their lack of presence at the start.
Yeah.
Because at the moment it does feel weird that like a transport plane is basically going to come down and be like, well, hopefully if I'm still here next time we can sort that out.
Yeah, maybe if Games Workshop can get round to having another keyword or doing something with aircraft transport that is different to how it works currently, because obviously bombers have been the issue, but transport planes have not been an issue at all. So if they could start on the table, that'd be great. But if
Yeah.
the other ones start off, I think fighters personally should definitely start off the table because that's kind of how it's supposed to work.
Yes.
So I think if they could maybe work with planes a little bit more, because they're really cool centerpieces to some armies, aren't they?
Yes.
And it would be nice to see them on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, where does the Helldrake fall? I've been thinking about my Helldrakes recently. I'm sort of like, I don't know what I don't know what their deal is now, because they're sort of like a melee harassment plane that now can't harass.
No, it's
So there's a few edge cases that need managing, right? And they need some thinking about.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, I think those are all the sort of key questions that I had as far as Deathwatch goes. Do you have any other sort of concluding thoughts or remarks on the faction at this moment in time?
Not really. I think they're in a good place.
Yeah.
There's so much you can do with them now.
Mhm.
ARKS of Omen's out.
Yep.
You can pick all these doctrines. I'd love for them to FAQ it, but that might be a bit much. Just being dev doctrinal game. But yeah, I think it's you can model whatever you want now on some of your units, and that is the biggest thing about Deathwatch is being able to give this guy a power fist and an inferno pistol, and this other guy something else. So it's a great time for Deathwatch. I think.
I do think it's nice. I think it's nice to have a rule set now that is really actively encouraging tooling your guys up, right? Especially your sergeants and your special weapons and all that stuff. It's sad when you don't see those out and around because it feels like the variety in the units is less.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as you say, it is a bit of a hobby nightmare trying to keep track of all the arms.
It is, and I do feel for people who now have to go back and try and find some of these special weapons or have thrown them away because they were never going to use them. But one of the biggest benefits to me is that you now have these epic moments in games where you've got this one guy with a melter gun that can now take out.
That's exactly it. It's the melter gun popping the tank or dropping the demon prince,
dude with a power fist taking out a Baden. These kind of silly things that really make the game what it is.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. It's been a while since my Jakari characters got flattened by like a Thunderhammer sergeant, and I'm kind of looking forward. I'm looking forward to that happening again. Right, those are good moments. Those are good moments, and exactly as you say, it's cinematic, and it's a lot more cinematic than just a lad with a bolt pistol doing not very much or whatever else. So, no, I think hopefully that'll come back, and as long as you hope it's a consistent design philosophy, and we see some more of it going forwards, and then people can tool the stuff up without worrying about it all changing again and everything else. But I guess only the future will tell on that front.
Yeah.
We will be rooting for you at LVO, Mike, and we'll be following your progress. I really hope you take some names and spring some surprises with the Deathwatch.
I will try.
Have you ever been before, or is this your first LVO? Oh, exciting!
First LVO. I went to the Bay Area Open in San Francisco, which was like one of my first trips overseas in ages.
Oh, incredible!
So this is dead exciting. I can't wait.
Amazing. Well, we'll be following with interest, and thank you very much for giving us your time today to talk Deathwatch. Get out and slay some aliens, just hopefully not mine. Everybody, do what you need, do what you need to do. Leave my aliens alone. They did nothing wrong. They've done a few things wrong. But yeah, happy hunting and enjoy a Deathwatch in ARKS of Omen. Thank you again, Mike, and we will see you all again soon. Bye bye.